If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. It helps me out and it always makes my day. Hope you guys enjoy. I apologize if the quality is terrible. Everything was just so zoomed in. And it felt like the quality was just terrible because everything was just being played on TikTok, while the actual window itself wasn't zoomed in properly. So I apologize for that, and I still hope you guys enjoy.
You didn't give me mod privilege just to expand people. I hate you, Coco.
Yo, this is gonna be crazy. A Christian versus an atheist. Who's gonna win?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
You're a mod now. Didn't player.
Awesome. My name is Mark Brody. This is my first time
Yep.
ever sharing my first name on TikTok, but W, you guys all know me better now.
Oh my gosh, he's nervous. Mark, you got this!
And
My brother's got this.
I've been interested in it since I was in junior high, so this has been a dream of mine. I love Coco too. He put so much hard work into it, and he's also competing in it, which is awesome. So for sure.
W. Why does Coco look a little bit nervous?
Getting into the debate at hand, Brody, the youth pastor husband, fellow devout Christian, not fellow devout Christian, because I'm not Christian, I'm sorry, devout Christian.
I skipped over the boring parts just so you guys can get to the debate. I don't want to bore anyone out, so let's get straight into it.
Okay, does someone have a timer for 5 minutes?
Yep, I can get that going.
Here we go. Oh my gosh.
Starting with the atheistic position, the problem of evil is a refutation of the Christian God. Coco, your 5 minutes, give or take, depending on if you use them all or not, is starting in 5, 4,
Here we go.
2, 1, begin.
Hello everyone. First off, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I also want to extend gratitude to the judges and the host. I will be giving my best evidential problem of evil, demonstrating the claim that the Christian God isn't compatible with evil as he is described in the Bible. Given the nature of the format for me and my opponent's opening statements, my statement will be a brief introduction to my argument, and any part that needs clarification will be discussed in the rest of the debate.
Okay.
In regards to evil, there will be 2 particular evils I will be discussing throughout this debate: gratuitous evils and inscrutable evils. Gratuitous evils are evils for which there is no reason as to why these evils should exist. Any God producing these evils would be doing wrongdoing. And inscrutable evils are going to be evils that we can see no reason for why they exist. We have no access to why God would allow such things, and these evils seem unnecessary. These type of evils in our world seem to be incompatible with the Christian God that is commonly described to be omnibenevolent, meaning all-loving, all-merciful, or perfectly just, meaning having the ability to know all things, and omnipotent, which can be defined in many ways, but for this debate I'll be describing it as having the ability to bring about any logical state of affairs that also are logically consistent with God's attributes. In these definitions, the Christian God to me doesn't seem compatible with evil. As one traverses the world we currently live in, examining the plethora of examples of inscrutable and possibly gratuitous evils, it seems less and less likely that God exists or could exist with his prescribed traits and create such a world. Give an example of inscrutable evil. Examples of this could be human suffering, such as fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, which according to Wikipedia is an extremely rare connective tissue disease in which fibrous connective tissue such as muscles, tendons, and ligaments turn into bone tissue. It's extremely slow, painful, and agonizing, and usually starts before an individual turns 10. Another example could be epidermolysis bullosa, a condition where the slightest touch can cause detrimental damage to one bearing this disease. They aren't allowed to run, skip, and during youth, play games with other children. This disease makes hugs something that one can't partake in due to potential harm, and it makes showers unbearable. 7.9 million children are born with life-threatening birth defects and conditions like the 2 previously mentioned. It wouldn't be of the baby's doing, but of the ancestors, and this wouldn't seem just to punish an innocent baby for others' crimes. If this was the case, this would mean that God designed a world that would punish 7.9 million babies due to the actions of their parents. This injustice seems in contradiction to a just God. Some theists might say these types of evils are important for soul building, but why? To better understand this, imagine you are a parent and you have 2 kids. Could you say that you are all loving and love all of your kids the same if you, for one of your kids, made them lie in rain puddles so your other kid could walk all over them? You let one of your kids kick your other kid for practice for their soccer practice. In this instance, we would see clear favoritism.
Is he actually serious?
Generating soul building and also allowing free will, with which Christians often highlight as reasons for why God does what he does. Examine the story of Abraham and Isaac, which at first might seem in contradiction to my previous claims, but please pay attention for my whole explanation. As you read Genesis, Abraham proceeds to do what God has instructed, only to be stopped by the voice of one of God's angels crying out to him. Although this method is extremely mentally traumatizing for Abraham and his son, this is an alternative world God could have created. So I end my opening statement with a final thought for the audience to think about. Think about this. If God is all-powerful, if God loves you,
3 seconds.
think about all of the suffering that occurred in life. Think about your own trials and suffering. Think about the horrors maybe some of you have witnessed. Where was God during all of this? Does this horrific world seem like something God would create? Couldn't God have done it any other way? These are questions that I ask myself. This concludes my opening statement.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
And with 5 seconds left on the clock, we conclude Coco's opening statement. We will give Brody a opportunity to give his opening.
Let's go, brother! Let's do it!
Brody, please take the floor. Like Coco, I will be giving you 5 minutes. I can either start you on a countdown, or if you wish, I can just start it when you begin your first word.
All right.
Here we go! Let's do it, Brody!
For being here, thank you for Coco for putting this together.
Here we go.
It means a lot to have you take your time out of your day to watch an event like this. My name is Mark Brody. I'm a born-again believer in Jesus Christ.
Youth
pastor. I served in ministry for 6 years now, and I'm very excited to be here. The problem of evil is perhaps the most common objection raised to the claim that there is a God who is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good. If he's all-knowing, he knows every instance of evil. If he's all-powerful, he has the ability to stop evil. And if he's all-good or all-loving, he should have motivation to stop evil. Now, I can agree with the first two premises. God is all-knowing, he is all-powerful, and he's all-good, but I believe that God has morally sufficient reasoning for allowing evil and suffering in the world. My claim is this: a world containing evil is consistent with God's desire to nurture people towards sainthood. This is often referred to as saint fostering. God's goal was to create a world where people have the ability to grow in virtue and meaningful relationships rather than remain static. Inherent value in virtues like compassion, self-control, and perseverance, and these virtues are known to develop in people when they are confronted with evil and suffering.
Oh my gosh.
It's not surprising that God would allow evil and suffering to exist in order to maximize these values. Now, I'm not making the argument that evil is necessary for us to appreciate the good, but rather that these virtues are unable to arise in individuals in a world without some evil and suffering. Hypothetically, without suffering, what would it mean to become compassionate? How would that even be possible?
That's what I'm saying!
With no evil, how could one develop virtues like wisdom, discernment, and self-control? It seems completely plausible to me that God's desire for mankind was not to create pampered, static automatons, but rather free and virtuous lovers who confront evil and grow from it. Now, you might be thinking, sure, some good can come from evil, but can it really outweigh all of the evil in the world? Is it really necessary for God to allow so much evil? Now, this will be a little technical, but these questions make a false assumption on the way that the parts relate to the whole. By the parts, I'm referring to individual instances of evil, and by the whole, I'm referring to God's overall plan for the world. Here's a good illustration that Marilyn McCord Adams uses in her book. Take a look at Monet's Rouen Cathedral. In the middle of the painting, there are splotches of green and black and brown, and if I were just to zoom in on these parts only, I doubt anybody would call it beautiful. These splotches, however, are redeemed or defeated by their incorporation into the whole painting. Now, the painting isn't beautiful because the good parts outweigh the bad parts, or the beautiful brushstrokes outnumber the bad brushstrokes, but rather the painting is beautiful because even the ugliest color on the canvas plays a part in the overall beauty of the painting. It is irrelevant on whether or not these bad colors are necessary to the painting, as long as they are incorporated in a way that adds value to the whole. So if my opponent spends any time tonight, my claim is not that every single instance of evil is necessary, but rather that evil is defeasible, meaning it can be overcome and redeemed. It seems to me in order for Coco to win this debate, he must do one of the following: either demonstrate that it's impossible for God to have a reason for allowing evil, or provide a single instance of an indefeasible evil, an evil that cannot be overcome or redeemed. If Coco is unable to provide either of these things, it seems completely reasonable to hold that the existence of evil is fully compatible with a God whose desire it is to create a world in which saints are fostered and evil is defeated.
Dang! Yes, Mark!
Perfect. And you are perfect on my timer. I don't know about yours. So I feel like you should get bonus points, but I'm not a judge for good reasons. So, Brody, if you once again want to take the stage for a 5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah. So Coco brought up the idea of two different kinds of evils, which is an inscrutable evil and a gratuitous evil. An inscrutable evil is evils that seem to have no reason. We can't think of a reason why they would exist. A gratuitous evil is one that actually has no reason. That inscrutable evils do exist. There are plenty of things that I see in my daily life that don't seem to have any grand purpose. Pointless. But to go as far as to say there are such things as gratuitous evil is too big of a leap, and I would grant that there's no evidence whatsoever for a gratuitous evil. This is like a thought exercise. It's a hypothetical.
Yeah.
So maybe later in this debate, Coco can actually give me an example of a gratuitous evil, or what I would call a non-defeasible evil, an evil that has no purpose, no meaning, cannot be redeemed. Until he's able to actually provide an example of this, I'm just gonna chalk this up as a hypothetical thought exercise that I see no evidence for.
Dang!
Brought up that his response to the soul building.
Yo, look at Coco, bruh. He's nervous, bruh.
Imagine like the example he gave of putting one kid down so the other kid could walk on top of him, or
look at him! Oh my gosh, bruh! He's literally going like
the idea of soul building that I'm put forward. Soul building in Saint fostering is at the benefit of the individual going through the suffering. So if one person is going through suffering, we know this. People develop things, especially relationship to God, when they face trials in their lives. This is what building muscle looks like. This is what training for anything hard looks like. You go through suffering and it produces character, produces perseverance. Us as individuals can be built into saints by going through suffering and trials ourselves. He brought up the idea that it would be unjust to punish babies for the actions of their parents. But again, this is not the point that I'm making. This is missing the mark. And I know that he gave his opening statement first, so he couldn't have known. But I am not saying that the reason people go through suffering is as a punishment. I'm saying that suffering is a thing that exists in our world. Evil exists, and God allows it to exist because he knows it'll develop our character, mature us, and produce virtues inside of us. Finally, he brought up the example of Abraham and Isaac, saying there must be less painful ways to generate soul building. I don't know if Coco has actually read the entire story of Abraham, but Abraham's life was full of suffering. Not just this one interchange he had with God, but he was called to leave his homeland, go into the land of Canaan. When he gets there, there's a famine in the land. He's got family conflict with Lot, and he actually has to risk his life to save Lot. The list goes on and on. Abraham had a very difficult life, so I think even for someone like him, this process was necessary to develop these good virtues inside of him. I hear this response. You're saying there must be some less painful or less, not as bad of a way. But again, this is pointing out this assumption that these sufferings are in some way indispensable or necessary, rather than the idea I'm putting forward is that they can be defeated. Like the painting I put. These dark colors aren't necessary for this painting. He could have painted it without it. But when they are redeemed into the larger whole, it makes sense. It gives value to the larger whole, and these evils are defeated. The same evils in Abraham's life, and I would argue even the examples you gave of the most atrocious diseases. You said one was the worst disease you've ever heard of. You have to make the claim and defend it that even someone who's suffering from the worst disease imaginable could not look back on their life and say, you know what, this shaped who I am and this was worth it, and that God can't redeem that. And I would like to point to one example as my time is running out. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, goes on to write Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about that the suffering in his life contributed to the overall good, and that it was necessary for the character that he developed. This is not a unique situation. Many saints look back on the suffering of their life as a necessary part to to grow virtues, including some of the worst diseases. So that's my rebuttal.
Thank you, and with a good amount of time on the clock remaining.
Yo, Coco's done for. How is Coco gonna respond to this?
What? You upon it.
What? Why does it sound like he's breathing heavily? Oh my gosh! Coco doesn't know what to do! Look at him! He's literally taking a deep breath, bruh.
Give you a countdown, or I can start the timer on your first word.
You can just tell me where to start.
Oh my gosh, he was all enthusiastic. Now he's scared, bro.
Go.
Okay, so I heard what Brody had to say for his opening statement. He's going to emphasize on the fact that evil is part.
Coco looks like he doesn't have any evidence. No, literally.
Shades of the painting that he showed us is going to contribute to the whole. If that's the case, well, God didn't really create that world to begin with, right? He placed Adam and Eve in this perfect garden. God didn't initially put everybody in the painting that Brody is even suggesting. These evils, these things that people suffer through, it makes them saints. It's supposed to bring them to sainthood.
He doesn't.
But God, in doing that, takes the risk that they won't join into sainthood. You often hear this quote from like Christians that God won't give you more than you can handle, right? We do acknowledge and we do witness self-unalivement rates, especially in the religious community, especially for people who are homosexual or don't really fit in to what Christianity puts as like the ideal human being, right?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're saying.
And also, it just begs the question, like, for people who are born with conditions, the condition that I mentioned in my opening statement, epidermolysis bullosa, right? Where essentially a kid is born unable to take showers or hug somebody. Could this encourage the kid? Could the kid find a way to like tough it out and become like a saint?
Did you not listen to Brody's point?
Have taken their struggles and turned to God and found a way to make good of it, right? But we've also seen many people go into areas of their life. We've seen people depart from Christianity. A lot of atheists spend their time praying to God and trying to overcome their issues and become this saint per se.
Coco, please.
Depart from the religion and find the religion.
Please tell me. Oh my gosh, Coco, please.
Atheism, going to agnosticism, spiritualism.
Coco.
So this evil.
You didn't even hear Mark's point.
It would even be necessary if it's just producing the opposite effect of what God wants. A question is like, could there even be another way than making somebody be born suffering? How is that building them? How is that going to make them a saint? Is that even necessary? Or are there other ways of doing that? Brody's opening statement is that these evils are very important for like developing character traits, but there are other ways of developing character traits. For example, God could personally come down and tell us stories about acts of bravery or provide us with books, acts of bravery. All of us have read a book and we've felt the fear of the characters that we read about.
45.
All of us have played video games and we've seen the character about to unalive and we felt like the risk that was at hand. We understand what it means to have compassion via stories rather than like experiences that are going to be traumatic most of the time, are going to cause like damage between us.
Dude, all he's doing is just saying each and every single point that Mark just brought up. Like, Mark just literally explained it, and then he just brings it up again and then questions all of it. It's like Mark has to literally tell him the same thing over and over again for him to understand, dude. He literally just spoke the same exact thing, dude. This guy is the worst atheist I have ever seen.
And especially when it comes to compassion, God could create us with some of these characteristics. God could create us with compassion, bravery, and not have us have to go through these trials to develop these certain...
Like he said, dude! Like Mark said, it's a challenge!
Aside from that, I think that's going to conclude my rebuttal.
We will now move on into cross-examination, where each person is allowed up to 10 minutes to ask the other questions about their take and press them, trying to find holes in their thesis statement and or supporting data. We will start, assuming this is okay with you, with Coco, who just gave his rebuttal. Coco, if you would like to take the stage to give your 10 minutes of cross-examination on Brody's position, then you may take the stage now.
Here we go.
First off, I'm gonna ask Brody just to establish like some.
I think Mark's winning so far.
Would you believe that your God is all powerful? At least in the sense that he can actualize things that follow the laws of logic and are logically consistent with his character.
Yes.
And then would you say that God is omniscient, all-knowing? He knows past, present, and future propositions?
Yeah.
And would you say that God executes perfect justice and is perfectly just?
Yeah.
Would you say that God is all-loving? He loves all of his creation?
I would.
So we said that the suffering and the evil that occurs in our world is supposed to be for sainthood. It's supposed to build people into religious or saints according to God. What would you say to God knowing that some of the struggles that people are going to go through are going to be the reason why they leave Christianity and even hate God in some instances, and yet still creates the person putting them through these trials and errors?
Well, I think I would push back a little on the framing that God is putting people through these terrors or these horrors rather than God is allowing them to happen. But I think that soul fostering is not threatened by people choosing to leave God. I think it actually makes God more loving that he would allow people to walk away rather than force them to stay with him.
Well, actually, I would actually disagree with that. Like, I would say God is putting people through stuff, because what would you say to a kid that's born in Detroit and is in an area that is highly populated by like gangs and rivalries, and he wakes up to like bullet sounds firing off in the alleyway? God is in control of souls and what bodies they go to and what environments they're going to end up in, and he chooses to put souls and kids in those environments.
Well, are you suggesting that God makes it so that people that were born in the inner city of Detroit are born without souls?
What do you mean by born without souls?
Well, you're saying God would be unjustified in allowing a soul to be created in this horrible situation. So if two people get together and make a kid, are you saying it would be better if they were born without a soul?
Couldn't God have kids born in different situations other than situations in which they would be in danger? There are also kids that are just born in native tribes off in the wilderness that have to like deal with like the forces of nature and probably like not the best conditions there too.
God is completely justified in allowing people of all demographics, incomes, poverty levels to procreate. I think that if someone's in a really poor position in their life, God's not going to make them infertile and not allow a kid to be born there, because even being born in the worst situation possible, that evil can still be defeated and overcome. That person could end up just fine. They're not doomed for all of eternity. There's plenty of examples. Some of our most favorite icons and celebrities have been born in like inner city Chicago and stuff like that. So I just don't think God would be justified in stopping those people from creating kids.
Yeah, some people can be successful being born in bad neighborhoods, but that's like one of like the thousands of people that are born in bad neighborhoods. You can look at statistics. A lot of people born in like really impoverished neighborhoods end up getting into like drugs or gangs and stuff like that. God does have people born in really poor and impoverished situations that are bad. God puts people in bad situations. And would that be like something that a loving God would do? Like having a kid born in Africa and having to deal with onchocerciasis, which is a disease that like blinds children.
Yeah, I'm still having a problem with the framing that God is putting these kids in this position. I believe that people have been given the freedom to procreate, and I can go ahead.
But couldn't God create a world without onchocerciasis or without gang violence, right? I know most theists are going to say that like, oh, that's impeding on free will, right? But God could have a world where people choose to make decisions, but the consequence doesn't entail. Just like the story of Abraham, where he went up the mountain to sacrifice his son, but right before he did it, an angel stopped him. This could be the instance for every single bad thing that happens in our world.
Yeah, so two questions there. The first, God could absolutely create a world without any given disease that you want to bring up. And my point is not that these instances of evil, these diseases themselves, are necessary to build people up. My point is that they are defeasible. They can be overcome. They can be defeated. And that doesn't even mean that everybody who has them will develop these saint-like virtues and become the most virtuous people and follow after God. God still gives people the freedom to ignore him and have their own way, but he's justified in giving people the option, the defeat condition, to overcome any struggles they have and then live in eternity with him. No matter if you're born in Africa or in LA,
Oh.
We're raised religious and end up like so. And God give them less to make it a little bit easier for themselves and make it more able for them to overcome those problems.
Wait, the beginning of that question got cut off. Could you just restate it one more time?
Individuals that are raised in religious environments that end up like self-unaliving themselves, right? And these trials are supposed to make them stronger or make them accomplish sainthood. Why couldn't God give them a little bit less? And it would still be a challenge for them and they could like overcome it and accomplish maybe this sainthood. But it would seem as if God gave them a lot, so much that they really couldn't handle it, not to any fault of their own. Life just gets really, really heavy for these individuals. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, those are tragic situations, absolutely. But I think all God's responsibility is to provide a way for these evils to be redeemed and to be overcome. And he has done that. And many, many people I know personally who were sorry, I don't know if I can say that word, but who were on the brink of unaliving themselves, have had encounters with Christ where that evil, that part in their life, actually becomes incorporated into the whole of their life, and they wouldn't wish it away.
It sounds like God. You said God knows future propositions, right?
Yes.
So God knows that like certain people are going to be born with lives that are going to be like very difficult to overcome certain challenges and accomplish sainthood. These people are going to self-unalive, and He knows all of this before He creates these individuals. Why would God still proceed to create these individuals?
Yeah. So this just doesn't account, like, if you look at the statistics, the most impoverished countries, the people that struggle the most to meet their basic needs, are the most religious countries. So clearly the existence of poverty and the existence of these like terrible situations are something that actually pull people toward God. So I don't think we can blame, real quick, I don't think we can blame somebody's rejection for God on their circumstances.
That's not really answering my question.
What?
Really bad situations, and they end up like unaliving themselves or turning away from God, right? God knows future propositions. He knows that He's going to give them too much, and it's going to be too much for them, and it's going to turn them away from Him, or it's going to cause them to take their own life. Why would God still proceed to give them just that much amount of suffering? Why not a little bit less? Why not
I don't, this is just not the Christian, you're attacking a straw man by saying that God is giving them more than they can handle, or He's giving them X, Y, and Z. Initiates evil, like moral evils against these people. I think this is a consequence of mankind. But my point real quick in bringing up the impoverished country example is I don't think it's fair to blame someone's disbelief on their situations. I think disbelief is something else.
God created people.
He's trying to interrupt Mark because Mark is bringing up strong, hard evidence. You can hear it in his voice.
Some people, the weight of life get too much for them.
What the freak is that? What the freak is that?
What is to be said about those people? God knew that they were going to go through these struggles. God knew that it was going to be too much for them, and they end up self-unaliving. And God created a world in which that would be something that happened in our reality. He knew beforehand and thought they would be better off, rather than creating an alternate world where they could still overcome these challenges, but not have to go through such intense challenges in order to gain some kind of sainthood.
Okay, so this is a difference in our views, Coco. Just viewing this life, it looks like that person's life is full of more suffering they can bear. But from an eschatological sense, this life is only a—
Stop it, annoying bear!
So someone could have the most horrific life here on earth and be redeemed in an eschatological sense, where after life they look back and say, that was really terrible, but it's worth it because I got to suffer with Christ, like Romans 8:9 says, we share in His suffering so that we can rejoice in His glory. So I think these are totally defeatable evils.
How are people going to be, how do you know that there's a guarantee that people are going to be redeemed after all of the evil that they do?
I'm not saying there is a guarantee. I think that God leaves the door open for people to leave Him.
I think that make the point like irrelevant.
Last 10 seconds. Please let this last train of conversation be your last.
Okay, so like, wouldn't that be like, wouldn't it be pointless in the end? Like, you're saying that the suffering that they go through might be redeemed, but we don't even know if it's going to be redeemed. So that point doesn't really stick. Like, someone might live a life of suffering and not get paid for that. It would just be useless suffering. We don't know if they're going to be redeemed. And also, doesn't Christianity say that people who commit—
I'm sorry, Coco. Just to keep it fair, you are, I hate to say, gish galloping. Because you are past your time, I just wanted you to wrap up because the 10 minutes are up.
Yeah, finish it off, Brody.
If you want to finish that question, as long as I have time to answer it.
Yeah, we can add minutes to the clock, and I can add minutes to your cross-examination as well.
We can just do this one question.
Yeah, he's just trying to waste time. I already know that Coco's trying to waste time, so that way Brody doesn't even have time to answer.
I would just say that, like, God knows beforehand that people are going to struggle. God knows beforehand that people aren't going to be able to handle it, and certain people are going to unalive themselves due to like not because they're weak. I'm not saying any of that. It's just that life is a lot for certain people, right? You're saying that like
you got a minute to get the microwave ready.
Like literally that point doesn't really matter because there might be people who suffer and don't get paid for their suffering. Self-unalive, that's a sin, and decide that they want to self-unalive and they don't want to be here anymore. Those people would get sent to hell essentially by the God that loves them.
Okay, so I'll give— oh, sorry, I was just going to say you have a chance to reply.
I would say that I think it's completely reasonable to believe that good and just for giving the offer of salvation, redemption, and defeat over anyone's evil who would accept the offer, knowing that some people will reject it. He is still a good and just God for offering.
Let's go, Mark!
There is no Bible verse that says that. There are different interpretations, but so I'm not gonna like put my stake in the ground one way or another, but it's completely plausible that these people have redemption in the afterlife.
Let's go, Mark!
Moving on, we will have another 11 minutes because of the extra additional bonus we've been granted. Praise the Lord, as Brody, I assume, would say, or not. Maybe that was sacrilegious, I'm sorry. As Coco has had time to question and try and poke holes in Brody's worldview, he will have the same to do to Coco.
All right, you can start. I'll just start talking.
Here we go!
Do you think it's possible God has a reason for allowing evil in the world?
I think it's possible, but I don't have any compelling evidence. He hasn't provided me with any reason why certain suffering should happen. So yeah, it's a possibility, just like it's a possibility that Bigfoot could exist.
So you're saying it's not a like the existence of evil and the existence of God is not a logical contradiction? You're making more of a probability claim? Is that what this is? Sorry, background noise. Sorry, can we pause the time?
Add 30 seconds because I assume Coco just has to get something done in the background. While we're taking this short break, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, like, follow, share, okay? Look at this Coco boy, this guy in the top left with his little head. Drop Same with this bro. Look at his head. Look at how majestic this man is.
Okay, so I asked if there was a possibility that God has a reason. You said that there is no evidence for it, but it's possible. So I said that this is not a logical contradiction. You're not running the logical problem of evil, correct?
No, today I'm running the evidential problem of evil. So God is described a certain way, and like what we see in the world is something that wouldn't really like match up with like how God is exactly described. I can give an analogy.
No, I think I got you. I'm just gonna keep going with my questions. I understand what you're saying. So you mentioned this God is incompatible with evil, correct? That's what you said due to the evidentiary problem?
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, so can you give me like a formal argument, like a premise, conclusion, or something like that, that would show me that this God is incompatible with evil?
Ooh!
Maybe an argument would be,
He doesn't know!
tough one. An argument that I could possibly give is if God is all loving, if God is all loving, evil does exist.
Well, the thing I'm looking for you to give an argument for is the first premise. Why is God incompatible with evil?
I would say God. Well, like during my opening statement, you said that God is all good. You said that God is all loving. Would you say that God desires evil?
I'm just asking for like a formalized argument. How you established the first premise of that if God is good, He wouldn't allow evil.
Hold up.
Why should I believe that?
Because God doesn't want evil, right? God's plan is He wants what's best for His creation. God is all loving. God is all good. He wants only good things. Unless evil is something that He can't really like get what He wants without, or it's a necessity or something.
What type of logic is that?
Have a reason for allowing something He doesn't want?
Yes, but again, I don't have like any evidence of that. It could be the other way, that God allows bad things to happen for no reason at all. We don't know God. We don't have access to His reasons. We don't have access to His brains. Only what He's told us.
So if we have no access to these thoughts, then how could you possibly make a probabilistic claim or say that like God probably doesn't exist due to the amount of evil in the world?
Well,
if we have no knowledge.
I never really made like a probabilistic. Well, I'm more so just looking at the evidence that's presented around us, right? So
why are you answering a question with a question?
Wanting the best for His creation, and yet we live in a world where there's so many things that God has created that do harm to His creation, the well-being of His creation. There's even laws in the Bible that God has presented that don't really promote the well-being of His creation and seem unnecessary.
Do you think God could allow evil as a type without needing every single token of evil? Do you know what I mean by that?
Elaborate?
Yeah, so when I talk about like a type, like a football player is a type, Peyton Manning is a token. So like he's like a specific example. Do you think God could be justified in allowing the type evil, as in like the whole of evil, to exist without having to necessarily require every single instance of evil?
Ooh!
I'm guessing He could. That would be more of an argument towards me, maybe? Because, like, are you saying that he would allow, like, lesser evils?
No, not necessarily. So let me give you a hypothetical, okay? Or like an example. Do you think that a father is
Coco's trying to
unjust or
rant on.
unloving for teaching their kid to ride a bike, knowing that their kid will fall and scrape their knee? They have that knowledge that their kid, like, at some point will probably fall.
In that example, no, the father wouldn't be bad for that, but that's also kind of irrelevant. Ask questions about, like, how is, like, a kid being born in an area with onchocerciasis?
Well, I'm asking the question. This is my cross-examination. It's not a problem. The father can still be just and loving for allowing their child to experience some sort of suffering in order for the betterment of them, like learning a bike.
Rato's in the chat.
Value that is added to the whole process through that suffering.
Yeah, but you'd have to explain how someone being born with a condition that's fatal would add value to their life.
Let me give you two hypotheticals here. So there's one hypothetical child, their parents let them play outside, they play sports, they go to high school, all these things, and they experience all the emotions and pain and everything that goes along with that. Child 2 in this hypothetical, there's parents put them in a futuristic experience machine where they are able to only experience pleasure and comfort their entire life. My question for you is, which child do you think would be more developed?
Ooh.
I don't really think that argument's, like, relevant, because God could just create the children already developed with the characteristics that he wants in those children.
That's not my question, though. I'm asking, which child do you think would be...
Who's dodging the question?
One child experiences life normally, goes outside, gets hurt, you know, has breakups, pain, all these things. The second child is in an experience machine where they only experience pleasure and comfort their entire life. Or maybe I can ask, which child do you think would be more virtuous?
Again, God could just create those children with the attributes that he desired for them.
Dude, he's dodging it with a question! And, like, random answers and just, like, ranting on just to, like, waste more time. Like... Dude, what is this?
I agree, Coco. Now, you go ahead.
And children with diseases, or it's going to develop them or make them, like, a better person. You have all this suffering that's happening in the world.
Wait, Coco, do you think that people born with cancer who grow from it and who have that as, like, a part of their life, do you think it's impossible that this could be redeemed, or this could be like contributed to the overall good in their life?
No, but there's also the case that it's not redeemed.
Okay, so this would be a defeasible evil then, because it has the possibility of being overcome and redeemed, right?
It's also not defeasible in some cases.
Dude, he's just...
Explain that to me. How would it not be defeasible in some cases?
You said in your statement that, like, certain evils are gonna allow people to grow and achieve, like, sainthood, and it's defeasible because they overcome them.
What's Coco doing?
When they go into a dark place and become the worst version of themselves. They become people who view the world and treat other people worse because of the cancer that they go through. So yes, it could have someone coming out better on the other end, but it could also have somebody coming out worse on the other end. God knows this is going to happen beforehand and still actualizes it.
Okay, but you agree that these are defeasible evils, though. I don't know how you can say that this is an indefeasible thing. Like, do you really think it's impossible for some people to overcome these? Like, getting a diagnosis, for example. You think, like, that's off the table? Like, it's impossible for them to overcome that?
It's not impossible, but there are people who don't overcome it, and God still actualizes those people and lets them suffer and lets them go into dark places, and I don't really see him helping.
So is your point that God would, in those cases, step in and prevent that evil from happening?
There are many options you could go with. God.
Bro, he's dodging the question! Can you answer the question?
I hear you. So, like, imagine this, okay? Imagine that your parents gave you an opportunity to watch I don't know if you have siblings, but hypothetically your little brother. And he's like, I'm trusting you with this responsibility. I want you to learn how to be responsible, and I want you to, like, take care of your younger brother. But I'm also going to be sitting on the couch right next to you the entire time watching you, giving you, as you would say, encouragement and pointers and all this stuff like that. Does this responsibility, like, have the same meaning as if this child was left alone to do their duty without the help of their parent?
But that's not even what I'm, like, suggesting.
Dude, why do you keep dodging the questions?
If God came to your house and showed up, do you think you'd have a choice on whether or not to believe in him?
Did the people who encountered Jesus have a choice on whether or not to believe
in him? Dude, you literally just
Jesus' own disciple doubted him.
Yeah. So like, God could come to my house and reveal himself to me, and I would still have the choice to turn away from him, just like the people who saw him multiply fish and bread, raise Lazarus from the dead.
Are you ever gonna answer his question, Coco?
They weren't abandoned of their freedom of choice.
I understand, but don't you see like a conflict of interest here? If God wants us to make meaningful decisions and have responsibility and develop these virtues, but he shows up, like you said once a month, but earlier you're saying he should stop any instance of evil like this. Why doesn't he step in like he did with Abraham? You don't see like a...
20 seconds, try and wrap it up.
So did God not want the people that he visited?
You're answering my question.
Yeah, but it's like God showed up for other people and they developed and made choices.
Mark is fully confident now.
Versus people in 2004 there or something.
Who did God step in every time they try to do something evil? I don't see that anywhere.
Not even every time, just like in certain instances, right?
Bro!
I'm gonna cut it off there because we are about 30 seconds over.
So, first and foremost, I want to say, like, I really appreciate the debate. I love Brody. Brody's awesome. My friend always.
Dude, he knows he lost.
The main points that I got from this debate, Brody's gonna say that, like, he basically said that, like, evil can produce sainthood, can develop people. We'd have to completely ignore the cases where it doesn't. God is all-knowing, God is all-loving, he loves his creatures, so why would he loves his creation, so why would he see future events, right, of individuals who life was going to be too much for them and they were going to unalive, like I mentioned in our debate, and still yet choose to put them through that? Test everybody, put them through trials and errors, and some errors are just going to be too much for certain individuals, and they're gonna like self-unalive, they're gonna turn away from God, they're gonna go and do horrific things in the world. Schmittler and tons of religious leaders who have done those things kind of happen given their struggles and whatever it is that they're going through. I'm not asking that God becomes a helicopter parent, as that was some of the question that was being asked of me. I'm suggesting that a loving God could do things in other ways, right? He could lessen the suffering of some that he sees in the future are gonna like self-unalive or leave Christianity, or he could even be there for them for maybe a moment in time.
He didn't even listen to anything, dude. Like, he didn't even like pay attention to anything Mark was saying.
To baby us. But there are other ways that would be more compatible with him being like all loving. No help from God, no interaction, and people are born with weights that they can't carry that are too much, that are not going to produce sainthood. So I don't really see the point of that. Why would God would still instantiate that if he actually loved his creation? And the disease that I mentioned, where showers are painful to one because it causes scars and damaging to their body, I don't see how that's producing sainthood.
You didn't even understand it because you didn't even answer Brody's questions or anything. You just kept following up with questions and random things.
If you were a father and you saw that, like, you know, you were going to put your kid on the bike and he was never going to learn how to ride the bike and he was just going to keep falling, hitting, and suffering, why would you still put him on the bike and tell him
3 minutes over, please wrap it up.
So, so I would say that evil is existent, but it doesn't always produce sainthood, and it was going to produce failure.
Okay, and transitioning into Brody's final statement / conclusions, we will give him 3 minutes. Either I can give you the countdown like I could give Coco or have been before, or once again on your first word.
Coco did not meet my challenge. I gave him at the beginning of the debate. Unfortunately, I gave him 2 options, 2 ways to win this debate. Either prove that it's logically impossible for God to have a reason, which he at the beginning of cross-exam said was not his point, or 2, provide a single instance of a gratuitous or an indefeasible evil. Now, Coco listed off a lot of things. He says, I don't see how these things, he kept saying that over and over, I don't see how this child who is suffering can produce a saint. I don't see how blah, blah, blah. If you remember at the beginning of the debate, Coco referenced 2 different kinds of evil. What he is describing when he starts his sentence with I don't see how is an inscrutable evil, not a gratuitous evil. This is an evil which I can't identify a reason, right? But he still has not provided a single instance of an indefeasible evil.
Oh my gosh.
Say that some trials are just too much for people. Are you really claiming that due to someone's situation, they have no option when God has made the option to be reconciled to himself available to all people? In fact, my own aunt had a disease that she had when she was very young, and the hospital said, you better start planning a funeral because she's not going to survive this. However, she survived it, was healed, and is now a better woman because of it. And she wouldn't wish this experience away because it made her who she is. Now,
dang!
The main point, Coco, that you kept referring to was that not all people are going to become saints. I agree with that 100%. I'm not saying every single instance of evil is indispensable or is necessary. What I'm saying is that the possibility of these evils being defeated is a reality in every case of the most horrendous evil.
Dude, he just destroyed him.
Also, there's a lot of avid Christians that hold to a view, I don't know if you've talked to them before, of universal reconciliation. It seems to me that this, if I was a Christian that happened to hold that view that all people end up being saved, this would undercut your argument completely. And if that is a logically coherent view of Christianity, then in the end, in an eschatological sense, every single person ends up having their evils defeated. There's no such thing as a person who's separated from God. And it seems like you have no argument if that view is correct. And this just further shows that evil is not a contradiction. It's not a problem. It's not anything against the goodness, the power, or the omniscience of our God. Finally, you also, your second point that I really kept noticing you say was that why couldn't God just create people this way in the first place? Why couldn't God create us compassionate, brave, etc.? This assumes that saint fostering is only instrumentally valuable. The only reason why God would want to foster saints is because of the end goal that's valuable. But I would argue that saint fostering is intrinsically value. There's intrinsic value in people triumphing over evil. There's intrinsic value to people growing and learning from their mistakes. But that God is justified in creating a world with evil. He's justified in creating the type. For your example of someone riding a bike, right? If I knew my kid was always going to fall, why would I teach him to ride a bike? God's not teaching one kid to ride a bike. He is creating an environment where people can learn to ride bikes. And he's justified in creating that environment, or that possibility, to fit the metaphor. This is the environment God creates where saints can be fostered, where people can have meaningful responsibility.
You might want to wrap it up. You are, the 3 minutes have kind of come, so you might want to wrap it
then
up.
I'll hold it there then, that's good.
Dude, Mark just destroyed Coco, and look at Coco, he's devastated.
Judges be deciding on a winner.
So we had 4 different categories that we were judging both interlocutors. Opening statements, rebuttals, cross-examine, conclusion. And there were specific type of criteria for them. I think both interlocutors did really well in terms of being able to explain their position, but I think the edge overall in terms of the argumentation, kind of the way that the rebuttals were addressed, the way the opening statements were given, and the control of the cross-exam in order to be able to support the overall argument, as well as a conclusion to address both the rebuttals and support the view. I think that by a slight margin goes to Mark Brody. I gave overall scoring 38 out of 58 to Coco, and 49 out of 58.
Yes! Okay, first judge. Mark takes the phone.
Next, we'll be moving on to he whose name I cannot pronounce.
The points presented by Coco were good, and I've heard them before, but they were not necessarily organic.
Dang!
There wasn't enough clash. So overall, due to the fact that the criteria were not met or refuted, and because of the preponderance of evidence, I think I'm going to have to vote for Mark on this one. 2 for the Christian!
Coco did okay, but again, Coco wasn't very direct. At the end of the day, I give it to Brody. I gave...
Let's go!
Coco with a 37 out of 58, and Brody with a 46 out of 58.
Yes! 4 for Mark!
Final score for Brody was 53 out of 58, so I gave it to Brody.
Let's go! That was like 20 minutes.
And just for the audience's point, 1, I enjoyed your suffering, audience.
5-0 is brutal. No!
Anything you want to say for yourself, Brody?
Gotta let the music play.
Copyright, but I love it.
I don't think easy is the right word to use. Coco came super prepared, and I feel like his objections to my points actually caught me off guard a lot.
No, he's being modest.
It's been an honor debating you, bro, and I'm looking forward to playing some more Fortnite with you soon, man. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
Of course.
If anybody else in here in the chat wants to debate, let me know. All right, my DMs are open. All right, this won't be the first one, and maybe Coco can host next time or something, or one of you guys can challenge Coco.
Dang!
Thank you, judges. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
W's, GG's.
Anything that you, Coco, our lovely host, would like to say at the end to send us off. Also, last little thing, everyone cringing in chat, good. I f***ing love your emotional suffering.